Continuing Zoroastrianism, The Religion of the Good Life by Rustom Masani. And we are at the Bombay Tower of Silence. The best example of the modern method is to be seen in the Bombay Tower of Silence. It is a round, massive structure built entirely of solid stone. A few steps from the ground lead to an iron gate which opens on a circular platform of solid stone with a circular wall in the center. The circular platform inside the tower, about 300 feet in circumference, is paved with large stone slabs, well cemented and divided into 3 rows of shallow open receptacles, corresponding to the triad: good thought, good word, good deed. The first row is used for corpses of men, the second for corpses of women, the third for corpses of children. There are footpaths for the corpse bearers to move about, a deep central well, bandar, in the tower, about 150 feet in circumference, the sides and the bottoms of which are also paved with stone slabs, is used for depositing the dry bones. The corpse is completely stripped of its flesh by vultures within an hour or two, and the bones of the denuded skeletons, when perfectly dried up by the atmosphere, influences and the power dried up by atmospheric influences and the powerful heat of the tropical sun, are thrown into the well, where they gradually crumble to dust, chiefly consisting of lime and phosphorus. In the compound of the tower, at a short distance from it, there is a small building called Sagri, where there's a sacred fire, where a sacred fire is kept burning day and night. In Mofussil towns, where it is not possible to do so, at least a light is being kept burning. And I can't help but think that this relates to shamanistic experiences as possibly being the reason for the whole thing. Maybe mystical is a better word for it, but ceremonies relating to the soul of the deceased. O Ahura Mazda, beneficent spirit, holy creator of the material world, when a pious man dies, where dwells his soul for that night? Where for the second night? Where for the third night? Ex Zarathustra and the Hadakt Nask. Ahura Mazda replies, "It remains at the place of his body, singing the Ustavati Gatha, asking for blessedness, blessedness to him whom Ahura Mazda of his own will grants blessedness. It is the soul of a wicked man. It remains within the precincts of this world for 3 nights, remembering all the sinfulness of its past life, and feeling at a loss where to go. It clamors, O Ahura Mazda, to what land shall I turn? Where shall I go?" The soul of a dead person that thus remains within the precincts of this world is under the special protection of Sraasha, whom Ahura Mazda has appointed to guard the souls of men during life and death. The religious ceremonies for the soul of the dead during the first 3 days are, therefore, performed in the name of, or with the preparatory formula of invocation, Shnuman, of Sraasha. The Sayashi La Shayast enjoins, "During all the 3 days, it is necessary to perform the ceremony." Yazdisim of Sraasha because Zoroaster will be able to save his soul from the bands of the Davas during the 3 days, and when one constantly performs a ceremony at every period, God, in the 3 days, it is as good as though he should celebrate the whole religious ritual at one time. And, remember, Zoroaster is obedience. So, the more obedient you are, the more the angel of obedience is on your side, isn't it? At the commencement of every Ga, 2 or more priests and the relatives of the deceased recite the Sraash Baj and the formula of the particular Ga and the Petit, or the penitence prayer, with the Kshnuman of Sraasha. At night, 2 priests perform the Afghan ceremony in honor of Sraasha. They sit on a carpet face to face with an altar of fire and a metallic tray between them. The senior priest, who has the tray before him, is called the Za'atar, or invoking priest. The other, who has the altar of fire before him, is called the Atar Evax, or the nourisher of fire. The metallic tray contains a pot of pure water and a few flowers. The Za'atar begins the Afghan, invoking the course of the introductory portion, which is composed in the Bazan language. The protection of Sraasha upon the soul of the deceased, who is specifically mentioned by name in the prayer. Both the priests then recite together the 7th section of the Sraasha Yasht, which sings the praises of the Yazata for the protection it affords. Besides these prayers and ceremonies, which are performed for 3 days and nights at the house of the deceased, the Yasna litany, and sometimes the Vendadad, with the Kshnuman Sraasha, are recited at an adjoining fire temple for 3 successive mornings and nights. Sorry for my tiredness and not being able to produce as many videos. Someone very hateful to the work is depriving me of sleep and such. The Uthamna ceremony. In the afternoon of a 3rd day, a ceremony is performed, called the Uthamna, before an assemblage of friends and relatives of the deceased and a few priests. The special prayers prescribed for this period of the day, namely the Sarash Hadakt and the Patit, are recited. Also a Bazan prayer with the Kshnuman of Sraasha, wherein the name of the deceased is mentioned, and the protection of Sraasha is implored for him. This is an occasion for announcement of charities. At the end of the ceremony, the relatives and friends of the deceased generally announce donations to charity funds in the Niyat, or memory of the deceased. Passage of the soul to the other world. On the dawn after the 3rd night, the soul is believed to pass on to the other world, crossing the bridge called Chinvat. This bridge is guarded by the Yazata Mitra. And, we don't have to worship these angels for them to be on our sides, and I don't think they would be on our sides if we treat them as something that they're not. But Mithra, think of Mithra as like what the Christians base, Jesus off of. Because remember my 888 video, Jesus is a egregor name rather than the Messiah itself, an egregor based on 4 people. But anyways, When the third night ends and the day breaks, with the first appearance of the light in the morning, the well-armed Mithra appears on the Elysian heights. This Yzata, who is known in the latter books as Meher Davar, i.e. Meher the judge, is assisted by Rashnu, the Yzata of justice, and Astad, the Yzata of truth. They judge the man's actions during his lifetime. If his good deeds outweigh the bad ones, even by a small particle, his soul is allowed to pass over the bridge to paradise. If his good deeds just balance his misdeeds, the soul goes to a place called Hamestagon. But if his misdeeds outweigh his good deeds, even by a particle, he is flung deep down the abyss of hell. Hamestagon, what does that mean? I don't remember. The dawn after the third night, after death, is therefore regarded as a very important and solemn occasion for the performance of religious ceremonies for the benefit of the soul of the deceased. The ceremonies performed in the afternoon on the previous day are repeated. The Afghan and Baj prayers are recited. The other ceremonies are performed. This being the day of judgment, the relatives and friends of the dead join in prayer for God's mercy on his soul. Baj ceremonies are recited, firstly in honor of the Yzata Rashnu and Astad together, who help the Yzata Meher. Secondly, in honor of Rama Kvastra, who is the Yzata presiding on the rarefied atmosphere of ether. Thirdly, in honor of Arda Fravash, i.e., the lofty spirits of all the departed souls, whom the deceased has joined. And fourthly, in honor of Sraasha, who guided the soul of the deceased in its journey for the other world. Remember, the basic Islamic funeral prayer is, four-parted. But, they're not worshiping angels to come join in the thing. When the Baj of Arda Fravash is recited, a suit of white clothes, together with the sacred bread and other votive offerings, is consecrated by the priest. This suit of clothes is called Syab. It is the Vastra mentioned in the Fravardan Yasht. Who will praise us with clothes in hand? The suit of clothes is generally given as a gift to the priest or to the poor. The other principal occasions on which the Afringan Baj ceremony should, according to the scriptural injunctions, be performed in honor of the dead are Chiharum, Dahum, Siraz, and Seiraz, i.e. the 4th day, the 10th day, the 13th day, and the anniversary day. Death does not put an end to the relation between the deceased and the surviving members of his family. According to the Zoroastrian belief, the Holy Spirit of the dead continues to take an interest in the living. If their surviving relatives cherish his memory, remember him with gratitude, and try to please him with pious thoughts, pious words, and pious deeds, the departed spirit takes an interest in their welfare and assists them with invisible helping hands. Therefore, the most essential tribute with which a surviving relative can please the holy spirits of his departed dear ones consists of pious thoughts, words, and deeds. Thus, the performance of meritorious and charitable deeds consists in a connecting link between the living and the dead. The scriptures praise the brilliant deeds of piety in which the souls of the deceased delight. On the days dedicated to the memory of the deceased, the relatives not only remember them and pray that their souls may rest in peace, but also distribute also distribute food and clothing among the poor of their community, and if they can afford it, set aside various sums in charity. And so we go on here. But may our thoughts, words, and deeds be in alignment, and may they relate to the rituals that we perform. Purification Ceremonies is chapter 2. Ya'azda'o Mashyai IP Xanthem Vahishta. Purity is the best from the beginning of one's life. This oft-repeated saying in the scriptures brings home to a Zoroastrian the sublimity of purity. Purification is held essential from a viewpoint of health as well as morals, as the mind is believed to receive some sympathetic aid from the purity of the body, and as cleanliness influences one's moral character, purification of the body is invariably regarded as an emblem of purity of the mind. Men and women coming in contact with impurities must purify themselves, not only for their own good, but also for the good of others. It is not enough that they should keep their bodies clean, and all household articles and utensils likely to have been defiled should also be purified, even though they may not have come into actual contact with impurities. Should there be the slightest suspicion that they have been affected in some way, they should, as a matter of precaution, purify themselves by means of various kinds of ablutions, accompanied in certain cases by segregation and performance of ceremonies. These purification ceremonies are divided into 4 categories: Padyab, Nahan, Barishnum, and Riman Sishoe. Padyab. The Padyab is the simplest form of purification of the exposed parts of the body. The word literally means throwing water, ab, over paiti, the exposed parts of the body. The person performing the Padyab says at the first, Kshna'athra Ahuraha Mazda'o, i.e., I do this to rejoice, Ahura Mazda. Then he recites the short formula of Ashem Bohu, and washes his face and other exposed portions of his body, hands and feet. He then wipes his face and other parts of the body, and finishes the process by performing the ceremony of Kusti, which consists of untying and retying the sacred thread with the recital of certain formulae. There are 4 occasions on which a Parsi has to perform the Padyab: early in the morning, after rising from his bed, by early in the morning, dawn, after answering the call of nature, before taking his meals, and before saying his prayers. So obviously you see there's a strictness of ritual practice that's kind of not able to be followed by most people because of the amount of time. Nahan. Bath is a higher form of purification gone through on specified occasions with the help of a priest. It consists of 4 parts: the ordinary Padyab Kusti, The chewing of a pomegranate leaf and the drinking of the consecrated gomez are bull's urine in a sort of ceremonial communion. The recital of the patit our prayer of repentance, patit, and the final bath. Now, obviously bull's urine isn't clean, but remember they're kind of reinstituting some stuff from what we'd call Hinduism. Well, the Indo-Iranian superstitions kind of made their way back in, didn't they? After performing the padyab, the man going through the ceremony recites the bhaj, a prayer of grace recited before meals, and chews 1 or 2 leaves of the pomegranate tree given to him by the priest. He then performs the kusti, recites the patit, and then goes through the nahan proper. Retiring to a bathroom, he recites the Kushnatra Uraha Mazdao formula, undresses himself, recites a part of the Sraash Bhaj, placing his right hand over his head, and praying with an uncovered head is prohibited. The priest hands him from outside a long spoon tied at the end of a stick, having 9 knots, various articles believed to have purifying properties. Thrice he hands him the consecrated urine, which is rubbed over the body 3 times. Well, in some ways it makes more sense than smearing human urine on yourself, but at the very least, that's going to go bad. And that's a horrible idea. Then he gives him thrice a little quantity of sand, which is also rubbed over the body. Next, he is given thrice the consecrated water, which too is rubbed over the body thrice. A few drops of the sacred water are generally sprinkled over the new suit of clothes to be put on after the bath. He then bathes with water, which has been hollowed beforehand with a few drops of the consecrated water. After completing his bath, he puts on the consecrated suit of clothes, finishes the Sraash Bhaj prayer, and performs the kusti. This finishes the Nahan purification. Orthodox Zoroastrians usually go through this form of purification on the occasion of Na'azat, the ceremony of investing a child with the sacred shirt and thread, and on the occasion of marriage. Women go through it at the end of their period of accouchement, while some devoted persons resort to it on the occasion of the Farvar Dagan, the sacred days at the end of each year. Bereshnum. This is the highest form of purification. The original object was to purify those who had been in contact with the worst forms of impurity, which appeared to be dangerous or infectious. In ancient Iran, a man who became unclean by contact with the dead or through any other source of defilement was required to go through this course of purification. When death occurred from an infectious disease, those who had been in contact with the dead and were, therefore, likely to spread contagion had to subject themselves to purification and segregation for 9 days as a matter of precaution. It was also enjoined that the living should, for a time, keep themselves away from the dead body, whether death was due to infectious disease or not, and that those who, for one reason or another, could not help remaining in close contact with the dead, should go through the long form of Bereshnum, purification and segregation. Bereshnum differs in several respects from the two rites already described. While the Padyab takes 1 or 2 minutes, the Nahan about half an hour, the Bereshnum, which originally had the object of both purification and segregation, lasts 9 days. While the Padyab needs no help of a minister, the Bereshnum requires the services of 2 priests. While the first 2 ceremonies can be performed in any ordinary house or in a temple, the Bereshnum purification must be gone through in a place open to the sky and set aside for the purpose, where there is no vegetation, water, or fire likely to be sullied by the touch of the defiled person undergoing the purification. In modern times, it is only the priests and initiates who go through this ceremony. It is incumbent on a person who wishes to be initiated into the priestly profession, as well as on a full-fledged priest who wants to officiate within the inner circle of the fire temple at some of the superior functions of ritual, to go through this form of purification. See Showa. In recent times, persons defiled by contact with dead bodies are required to go through a comparatively simpler form of purification known as Si Showe, i.e. 30 times washing. For the performance of this rite, the services of 2 persons are required, of whom one must be a priest. The materials for purification and the processes of the baths are almost the same as the case of the Nahan purifications. And nowadays we have something called a dry ablution, which kind of saves us from a lot of the excess difficulties of these.